Welcome back to the report. Some 75 Sunnis in Iraq were killed recently in a single attack by an unknown militia. The attack is sure to worsen existing sectarian tensions. Nazli Tazi has more.
Developments in Iraq have taken yet another turn for the worst following deadly attacks instigated by an armed Shi'a group against Sunni worshippers at a mosque in Diyala, northeast of Iraq, last Saturday. The estimated number of Sunnis killed at the hands of militiamen is believed to have reached anywhere between the 60 to 75 mark. As these images show, the blood of victims spread thickly across the walls of Mus'ab bin Umayr Mosque and made public the sheer brutality and impunity with which the attacks were carried out.
يعبر مجلس النواب عن أسفه البالغ إزاء الاستهدافات الأمنية للمواطنين الآمنين وآخرها ما حصل في عملية استهداف للآمنين في بني ويس في ديالى.
Iraqi health officials called to the scene described the slaying as utterly reprehensible and likely to aggravate sectarian tensions further, as much of the present tensions revolve around questions of inclusion and representation of disenfranchised minorities. Iraq's most powerful tribal leaders responded by calling upon Sunni politicians to withdraw immediately from unity government talks, a move many contend will inevitably thwart the formation process of a stable representative government. While the central government initially pointed the finger of blame towards the Islamic State group, the responsibility, as later reports and accounts revealed, have shown that the village where the attacks took place was not under the control of IS, but rather the government. Although Haydar al-Abbadi and outgoing Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki both strongly condemned the attack and called for an investigation, opponents continued to hold them answerable for what took place in Baqulba, accusing them both of reinforcing the silence that keeps perpetrators from being lawfully punished. Since his ascension to power almost 3 weeks ago, al-Abbadi has faced a litany of accusations voiced by prominent Sunni figures of state-backed retribution against the country's largest minority group and failure to form a power-sharing government. Despite regional patterns of sectarian tensions and signs of a deepening crisis, Abbadi remains optimistic that his new vision will relieve the country of sectarian conflict and rampant corruption. But can Abbadi's term in office overturn age-old corruption and deliver on the demands of Sunnis and others, or will the country fall victim to a new era of renewed sectarian violence? Nazli Tazi, The Report.
Joining me in the studio to discuss the situation in Iraq is Yousif Al-Khoei, who's director of the Centre of Academic and Shi'a Studies in London, and he's also executive director of the Al-Khoei Foundation. And Mehiyar Kathem, who's a doctoral candidate at the School of Oriental and African Studies in London, whose research focuses on Iraqi civil society. Welcome to the show, both of you. Yousif, how desperate now has the humanitarian situation become for Iraq's minorities?
I mean, to present the problems of Iraq in sectarian terms is an actually, to me, is a criminal act. The problem in Iraq is not a Sunni-Shia problem. ISIS has destroyed many Shia and Sunni mosques in the areas they control. The clip you showed is a Sunni mosque blown up by ISIS. And the way, unfortunately, it was represented on this program as if it is something the Iraqi government has done. I am not saying the Iraqi government is blameless, but what I am saying, the humanitarian crisis is really dire in Iraq. Hundreds of thousands of Iraqis have been displaced, both within Iraq and outside Iraq. They include Christians, Yazidis, Sunnis, Sunni imams, and Shias. And this is what ISIS is doing to the population of Iraq. And it is very unfortunate that ISIS is being represented as a spokesman for Sunni Muslims. ISIS is a deadly cult, deadly to all of us, deadly to society, deadly to Sunnis, deadly to Shias. And these kind of reports, which you have just shown, do not actually help. All I know is that many, many Sunni families from the areas which ISIS has displaced are now living in Shia cities in southern Iraq, in Najaf, Karbala, Basra. The Iraqi nation is one. There is a political agenda to turn this and to turn the whole area into sectarian conflicts. And I think it's about time, I'm not sure if you will broadcast this or not, that broadcasters...
Well, we'll broadcast it, but
yes.
The point is this, that many Iraqis will tell you, and have told me over many years, that, of course, before the war and the invasion, Shia and Sunni and many others lived side by side without this kind of violence.
Yes.
But what they also say is that changed with the Bremer governor, and that was an administration
yes.
that was based on turning one side of the Iraqi society against another.
Well,
so it may not always been true, but it's true because of what the Americans do. That's the point that's made.
It's true. I mean, it is true because the Shiites had no rights under Saddam. Just because the Shias want to share power with Sunnis does not make it a sectarian war. We need to educate ourselves that we cannot divide the country into sectarian lines. What we need to do is create civil society. We need civil institutions. We need accountability.
Let me bring Mehiyar in. I mean, well, you know, that no doubt is true, and it's what many people will want. But is it a fact about what's happening now?
I would just like to underline what's been said. I think what's essential now is that there is a civil society movement to actually recapture Iraq from the sectarian politics that's been imposed on Iraq. And it's a politics of division, and it's an American politics imposed on Iraq. The problem now, what we find, is that the sectarian system is actually quite, as a political structure, is quite entrenched in Iraqi politics. We need to actually go back to the drawing board and start with zero, and bring all these different groups, bring our brothers and sisters together to actually find a solution to Iraq's problems. Iraq's problems are not sectarian in nature. They're a power issue to do with regional conflict, to do with Kurdish aspirations, because there is a Kurdish project. The Sunni and the Shia need to come together, and this hasn't been, in terms of the political leaders. I mean, of course, we lived by side by side, and of course we do so in Baghdad and other cities. So I think the solution now is actually to take a step back from the politics of sectarianism and actually to look at Iraq as a future state, a state that we can build together. And I think, just to reiterate what's been said, is that we need to actually overcome the sectarian lens that we look at Iraq with.
Do you think this is going to happen with the new government? Doesn't look like it, does it?
Well, if broadcasters keep saying it's a Sunni Shia, it's not going to help.
Well, okay. Let's step back a bit here. The country's in flames.
Yes.
It may be true that there are inaccurate broadcasts, but it isn't caused by inaccurate broadcasting.
It's not inaccurate broadcasts. It's broadcasts which 24/7 they keep pumping this poison of the Shia's done this. You know, the Shia city of Amirli has been besieged by ISIS for the last 80 days, and you're not broadcasting anything of that. That is what is making it sectarian. We all need to stop thinking in sectarian lens and actually present the positive examples.
Is your point that there is no sectarian conflict now in Iraq?
I think there is, but
that's what people are reporting. Now, the causes and solutions are a different matter, but the fact that this exists has to be acknowledged. Otherwise, it can't be dealt with.
But people are not actually reporting that many people in the army, Iraqi army, are of Sunni origin. Many people are not reporting that the deputy president, the deputy prime minister are Sunni. The Sunnis are in power. Nobody wants to report it, and the mass of your people think the Sunnis are some persecuted minority. This is wrong. What we need to do, as the Ayatollah Sistani has said, the Sunnis have some legitimate demands, and we must address them together. As Iraqi citizens, we must address the legitimate demands of the people who think certain rights have not been given to them, but not to turn this into a religious war. And this is, unfortunately, is not going to be solved if we do always speak about religious wars. It can be solved if people reduce their demands and people find a way they can live together as good citizens. They respect their Shia, Sunni, Christian, and everybody in society. And that's not happening.
Yeah, do you think it's liable to happen until this... well, there isn't a government yet, but do you think a government can emerge from this that will begin that process?
Well, what's happened actually is we're actually reproducing the same sectarian system that we've had, and it's actually caused a lot of these problems. The sectarian system now, actually, in terms of the horse trading that's happening between the political parties, is actually part of the problem. And now the Kurds want more resources from the Iraqi state. They want funding for their Peshmerga. But at the same time, they're exporting their own oil through Turkey. Al-Abadi. And again, the Sunni representatives, I mean, we call them Sunni representatives because they are largely Sunni parties, and the Shia likewise, that they are also horse trading regarding the ministries and the allocation of the state. So again, I mean, the solution hasn't been there for the past few weeks. I mean, of course, we've heard about Abadi. Abadi is actually not hasn't actually taken power. Malik is still actually there, and because it's a process of transition. So until we see Abadi's character and personality being reflected in the political system, we can't really say what's going to happen in the future. But no doubt that the sectarian system we've had for the past 10 years will continue to be reproduced during the next few years, and that's unfortunate.
And do you think that the kind of local support for ISIS can be detached from it?
I think so, particularly if we go back to 2006 and 2007 with the American surge. What that happened was that there was a project to actually divorce Al-Qaeda from Al-Anbar, from other areas, from the Sunni population. That worked very successfully by pumping billions of dollars into the grassroots and actually making sure that they were on our side, the side of the Iraqi state, rather than Al-Qaeda. And we need to see that. We need to see more of the awakening councils or something like that in different areas. But it can only come with a concerted effort by all Iraq's groups.
And also by the regional powers. If Iran and Saudis can strike a deal, all this nonsense about sectarianism will be largely reduced. And to be honest, everybody, whether it's the superpowers or the regional powers or the local powers, they are using this deadly sectarian card to achieve their objectives. And we really need to ask everybody to misuse the good name of Islam and religion to do this. And if they don't do this, it will be harmful to all of us. We are all in it together.
Do you think Saudi policy is beginning to shift because there's some sense now that something that they funded or were supportive of might now be a danger to them, and that they're recoiling from that?
I mean, extremism and is self-destructive. And the very people that the Americans, I mean, it goes back to what the Americans did with Al-Qaeda. They created it to fight Russia, and then we have 7/7 and 9/11. The same thing is happening today. Is we have armed these people who are abusing the name of Sunni Islam and creating acts which are beyond human behavior. And they're putting the whole area, and including this country and other countries, in the danger of violence and war.
Do you think, while we're talking about the exterior interference in Iraq's affairs, do you think that the Americans' policy is now to give up on a centralised Iraqi state and say, well, Plan B is a divided Iraq?
I think the official policy is to have a unified, it is a unified from the American administration and largely from Europe. But we've seen now that there are at least 7 countries in Europe, including Canada and increasingly other countries like Australia, willing and actually are funding and arming the Kurds. And therefore, that policy, which we've had for the past 10 years, may be actually falling apart. So like we've seen it, like we saw with the emergence of the Kurdish state in the 1990s, in the early 90s, under the humanitarian sort of facade and help of the Kurdish refugees. Of course, that also, we needed that help in the south, but that didn't come. And now we've seen that again with what's happening with the Christians and Yazidis being taken advantage of to actually create and actually strengthen their Kurdish state. So we have to be very careful who we supply weapons to. And of course, this is to do with America's retrenchment policy in the region. Actually, America isn't so important as it was a few years ago. And therefore, you've seen other players emerging into the scene. And this is unfortunate because we need, more than anything else, we need a power to actually bring people together, a unified power like America, but it hasn't really been coming.
Do you think that's true? I mean,
yes, absolutely. I mean,
but America? I mean, well, America's the place that destroyed the place.
The problem is there are many people who have destroyed the place. The problem is the menace is going out of the loop, and we have been very selective. The beheading of Iraqi people has been going on for 2 months. We only act when some American, as unfortunate, as sad, and as horrible it is, we need to act for the safeguard of the Iraqi people, not to be selective. The town of Amirli, I'm telling you, for 80,000 people have been besieged for the last 90 days. They are crying, they run out of food, they are being threatened with beheading. Now, why is it that we are all not making this headline news. The selectivity in dividing people into Kurds, Shia and Sunni is not going to help us.
Okay, well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for in this discussion. I'd like to thank both my guests for having joined us. We're now heading for our second break of the programme, but do join us shortly when we'll have reactions to the joint peace statement issued by the Muslim Council of Britain and the Board of Deputies of British Jews after the break.